First of all, I want to thank my colleague Deputy Jennifer Whitmore for her work on this motion and on this issue. Minister, the desperate situation on Mount Street has been a growing humanitarian crisis for months, with hundreds of men and boys sleeping in the cold in completely unsanitary conditions, which has led to the spread of disease in recent weeks. Local activist groups and volunteers have been working tirelessly to help these men to provide food, warm clothes and blankets. Where was the department? Where was the emergency response? Where was the urgency that this crisis required? Why was it only in the past week that a capacity review was undertaken to find the number of vacant beds available for asylum seekers? How can you stand over that? When over 1,000 people have been sleeping rough in sub-zero temperatures, fending for themselves on the streets of Dublin, this government should be ashamed of themselves. And right when we think that the situation has reached rock bottom, that your department's treatment of these people could not get any worse, what happens? Ahead of St. Patrick's Day, the hundreds of people on Mount Street are shuffled onto buses to be transported to new accommodation, with no transparency on where they're going or what to expect. Clearly, giving these people the impression and the hope that things were going to get better. But the reality of the situation in Crooksling was stark. The best that the government could apparently provide were more tents isolated in the middle of nowhere, far from the volunteers who supported and protected them, and left with a gang of balaclava-wearing people shouting racist abuse outside the gate. Minister, it shouldn't require much critical thinking from the government to realise that isolating people from their very limited support base will not make them safer. And for the government to defend the conditions in Crooksling by saying that access to health services and transport links to Dublin are to be put in place in the future is laughable. Why on earth was that not done before you bussed hundreds of medically and physically vulnerable people into an isolated area? It's nothing short of negligent. Minister, you need to listen to the people that you sent there, to the people who within a number of hours were walking 19 kilometres back to Mount Street. Why? Back to an area with no sanitation or security, because ultimately they actually felt safer there than the accommodation that you provided. No one's saying that this is easy, that the war in Ukraine didn't put incredible levels of pressure on the international protection system. But instead of acting on the recommendations of the Catherine Day report after that fact, instead of immediately starting the work on the 6 state reception centres and 700 modular homes, the government's response has been shambolic, with no sign of medium or long-term planning. If you'd followed the recommendations of the report, the 6th centre would be delivered this year. Not only are we nowhere near even having one, you're refusing to even disclose the location of the centres until after the local elections. Playing politics with people's dignity, their health and their fundamental human rights, and everybody can see it for what it is. It's a complete and utter disgrace. Not only do you seem to be either reluctant or incapable of delivering the much-needed reception centres, it also seems there is available accommodation that you're just not using. In a PQ response to me yesterday, you stated that there were 3,100 potential vacancies within the accommodation centres contracted for Ukrainians, with 1,300 of them appearing to be usable. It's not good enough that people are left in the cold, being physically and verbally abused while these beds lie empty, all because the department doesn't seem to have bothered to even check the capacity until March. The rise in the number of asylum seekers is often phrased as a crisis, but I don't think that that's helpful, because the reality is there will always be wars and displacement, there will always be people fleeing persecution and people seeking a better life. People have a right to seek protection here, and we have a legal obligation to provide it. And as an economically successful and safe country, Ireland will be a destination for people. Ireland needs to be able to handle this number. What we need is a coherent plan from government on this issue, and we need it quickly.